Now then, class, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle was released in 2024, and in today's lecture, we'll be taking an archaeological look at some of the Easter eggs that I discovered in the Prologue and Marshall College chapters during my last expedition. As you might expect, there will be spoilers for the first two levels of the Great Circle and how its events tie into established to the lore in Indiana Jones films and comics. So please do bear that in. Are you okay? Oh. Anyway, please turn to page 32 in your textbooks and we'll get going. The biggest movie referencing Easter egg in The Great Circle is undoubtedly the game's opening prologue chapter, which lets players experience the opening scenes of Raiders of the Lost Ark as if they were there. That means you get to wander the path through the Peruvian jungle towards the temple where Indy finds the golden idol, and along the way witness video game versions of memorable scenes like the one where the Peruvian guide gets jump scared by a statue. Or that bit where spiders crawl on Indy's back and he wipes them off with his whip like an utter badass. And even that bit where Doc Ock mugs Indy off by running off with both the idol and the whip.
I'll be the idol. Give me the whip! Adios, senor.
Oof, ain't no multiverse bringing you back from that one, Otto.
Adios, Lila.
Despite the fact that the prologue is pretty much a faithful recreation of events from the movie, the gameplay isn't as linear as the films, and it actually lets you go off and explore a little bit of the environment surrounding the path to the temple. On the way to the entrance, you'll wander by the remains of an old campsite left by the recently impaled archaeologist Forrestal, whose footsteps Indy is following in. If you choose to explore this campsite further, you'll find the book Warriors of the Cloud sat atop a backpack. I'm sure this book has lots of great history in it, but the most interesting thing about it is the name of the author, Maria Smirnova. Maria, you see, is actually a character who appeared in a trio of French-language Indiana Jones comic books, starting with Indiana Jones et les secrets de la pyramide, which, according to the Indiana Jones wiki, translates to Indiana Jones and the Secret of the Pyramid. But I don't speak French, so I've got no idea if that's true or not. Anyway, in the comics, Maria is a reporter who first met Indiana in 1923, while he was still aspiring to be an archaeologist. Interestingly, their final adventure together, Indiana Jones and the Cursed Grimoire, is set in 1936, the same year as this exact scene in Raiders. So I'm not sure why Indy ignores the fact that this book was written by someone he's been pals with for around 13 years.
This was Forrestal's favorite.
Why did they leave these things behind?
I think they were intent on coming back.
Just before Indy reaches the entrance to the temple, he passes this beautiful body of water. Once you're done vandalising the place by kicking old cans into the lake, you can explore around the water's edge where you'll find 3 ancient artifacts lying amongst the crumbling ruins.
Horse, brown, simple. This is Chachapoyan.
These artifacts don't really have any links to the movies or the extended Indy lore, and aren't really your traditional Easter eggs. But what's interesting about these specifically is that any artifacts that you find in the prologue, along with the book from the previous point, will appear on a shelf in Indy's office in Marshall College. Find none of these and the shelf will be empty, but find all 3 artifacts plus the book and you can go back to Marshall College and check on them whenever you want.
From Peru. Not exactly worth risking my life over.
If you're making a game about a treasure hunter and you've got a waterfall in the game, like this one here at the back of the lake in the prologue, video game law states that you have to have a secret area behind said waterfall for budding adventurers to find and explore. But what untold riches lurk behind a waterfall in an Indiana Jones game? Fortune and glory, perhaps? Well, let's go take a look.
All right, just a snake. Nothing more.
Oh, so no treasure at all then? Just a reference to how Indy famously hates snakes? Well, there are actually a couple of moments that reference Indy's snake hatred, snake-trid in the Great Circle, but this one here is the first that you can find.
Where the hell were you?
Once the end of the prologue rolls out, Indy wakes up in Marshall College, the university where he teaches as a professor of archaeology. This location features heavily at the start of Raiders, and Indy's classroom, which you can actually visit in the game, is home to the Love You scene, which is one of many iconic moments in the movie. In this scene, one of Indy's students closes her eyes to reveal that she's written Love You on her eyelids, which throws Indy off his lecture slightly.
Reason to date this find as we have.
The Love You student is actually nameless and uncredited in the movie, but if you search her desk in the game, you'll not only find a cheeky little love note from her to Mr. Jones, but also this note finally gives the Love You student a name, and that name is Shirley. Surely she should have called him Dr. Jones, though. These next few Easter eggs are located on and around Indy's desk, starting with this apple here. Indy fans will instantly get this reference as, at the end of the Love You scene, one of the pupils leaves an apple on the desk for Indy as he leaves.
I had it, Marcus.
This is acknowledged by Indy in this short voice line.
This kid with his apples. Save that for later.
Yeah, saving it for later so that Marcus doesn't steal it again, the bloody apple thief.
Not at all.
Doesn't say.
Now, I'm not exactly a font of Indiana Jones lore, but there is also a little note on the table here that might point towards the reason why Indiana broke off his engagement to Marion Ravenwood after the events of Raiders in 1936. Set in 1937, The Great Circle makes a couple of references to Indiana and Marion's breakup, which, according to Indiana Jones Wiki, was because Indy had convinced himself that the marriage would not work and that Marion wouldn't want to be tied to a man who would be away half the time. Well, during a conversation with Marcus, Indy mentions that he shouldn't have gone on an expedition to Siwa.
Maybe I shouldn't have gone to the Siwa expedition, but it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
And when you got back, she wasn't there.
On Indy's desk, you can find a note about a cat mummy that was found during the Siwa dig. Flip that over, and there is a handwritten note that says, "Meet Marion, Hotel Redmont, October 2nd, 7 p.m. Now, there's nothing about a Hotel Redmont on the Indiana Jones wiki, but it's a good guess that, based on what Marcus just said, Indy went there to meet Marion after the dig, and she wasn't there, which kick-started his doubts that the marriage would work. This one's a nice little double Easter egg for you all to enjoy. Pick up this note titled Bjorkman's Letter in Indy's classroom, and you'll be able to read about a Swedish artifact called the Uppsala Scroll. This letter tells a story about the scroll being stolen from a Dr. Lawrence by a dangerous cult, an event that did actually happen in the graphic novel Indiana Jones Adventures Volume 1. That's the first part of this Easter egg. The second part, though, is grounded in the real world because the address of the accommodations offered to Jones and potential companions in Uppsala in that letter is the same as that of Machine Games, the Swedish developers who made The Great Circle.
Everywhere.
And finally, the last Easter egg that I've managed to spot in Marshall College was this temple map for something called the Temple of the Forbidden Eye. It's a fairly detailed map that warns of false pathways that leads to death and deadly booby traps, but it also promises your greatest secret desire if you manage not to look into the eyes of a deity called Mara. Rather than being a reference to a film or a comic book though, what this actually is a reference to the Indiana Jones adventure ride in Disneyland that opened to the general public on March the 4th, 1995.
It's more than a ride. It's real. Now your fears have a name. The Indiana Jones Adventure, new at Disneyland.
All right, class, settle down, settle down. Now, those were just the Easter eggs that I spotted in the Prologue and Marshall College sections of the game. There are plenty more nods to Indy's adventures dotted throughout the rest of the Great Circle, so for your homework, let us know if you find any cool Easter eggs in the comments below. Thank you all for attending this lecture. If you enjoyed it, enroll into the Eurogamer School of Easter Eggs by liking the video and subscribing to Eurogamer for almost daily videos about video games. Now, why not click on one of these other Easter egg lectures that are on screen and clickable right now while I enjoy this apple. Thanks, by the way.